Good Friday afternoon, everybody, and welcome back down to my very messy basement slash library. And it is officially after Christmas, and that means you guys are going to get one of two videos for my end of the year list. Today is one of them. These are my top 10 favorite books of 2024. And this was a very hard list to narrow down. But I picked the books that I enjoyed the most. I have everything from like horror to even sci-fi to literary thrillers. I mean, this was a very, very good year for reading for me. And as of recording this, I'm almost done with my last two books of 2024. So I'll definitely get those done before New Year's Eve and get ready to start a new year. But more on that very soon. Right now, let's take a look back at the top 10 books of 2024. And starting at number 10 is Cadaverous by J. Bauer. And this was part of the Books of Horror Indie Brawl. And this one was always one of my favorites during that whole bracket system. I listened to this on Audible, and I really regret not getting a copy of it because I actually met Jay Bauer at AuthorCon. What are you going to do? But anyway, this was about a death metal band, sort of, that gets carried away with satanic power, and the main guy who's a part of the band falls in love with this girl, and she ends up being a little bit more crazy than him. She delves into like the occult and demonic entities. But this book also starts off with the 2017 eclipse that happened in Illinois. That's where Jay Bauer's from. So that's where Ozzy played Bark of the Moon, I believe. And there were like all sorts of tentacles coming out of the eclipse or something. And it caused the main guy to just go crazy. I love this book. I love metal music. So this book was tailor-made for me. At number 10, Cadaverous by J. Bauer. At number 9, I have one of three splatter westerns that I read this year. I decided to go with How the Skin Sheds by Chad Lutzke. This was a fantastic novella. It's only 100 pages, and this is about an outlaw who goes home to like his sister, and he finds her brutally murdered with her nipples missing. So it's up to him, his albino niece right there, and a free slave, and they just go on the hunt to find this guy that ravaged his sister and other women. So think of this as True Grit, but more gory. Very good book, and it was my introduction to splatter westerns. So that was number 9, How the Skin Sheds by Chad Lutsky. And coming in at number 8 is Live Girls by Ray Garton. And this was his debut novel, believe it or not. This is basically about the seedy underground of New York. And there's this place called Live Girls that they have vampire strippers in this club. And our main guy decides to go to get rid of his thoughts for his ex-wife, and he becomes infatuated with one of the dancers, and she turns him, and he slowly becomes a vampire. But there's this girl at his workplace who is worried about him, and she becomes infatuated with one of the dancers as well, and she turns as well. So before they turn even further, they decide to go on bloody revenge. Very good, very sexual, and very gory. I really enjoyed this book. And this was part of my October reading, because I read vampire books. So, one of my faves, Live Girls by Ray Garton. And after reading that, it caused me to get some more of his books. So I'm hoping to knock out some in the coming year. But moving on from there, I have my first Kindle read on this list. And I think it might actually be my only Kindle read. I read a lot of Kindle books. But I guess out of the many books that I read on Kindle, this one was my favorite. Night of the Prowler by John Athen. This is just your run-of-the-mill throwback slasher. And this is about a teenage girl who's working at a gas station, and there's just this crazy lunatic on the loose. He escaped from an asylum, I believe. And he's slowly making his way to her to finally get rid of her once and for all. This dude was sick. I believe his name was Eugene Dobbs. But probably one of the most intimidating slasher villains that I've ever read in a while. There are some very gory death scenes in here, especially one that he does with a child predator. It's super messed up, but I really enjoyed the hell out of this one. I almost put another book by John Athen on here, but this one was my favorite. So, John Athen, I'm definitely reading more from you, sir, coming in the next year. So, that was number 7. And at number 6 is Here Comes the Sun by Justin M. Woodward. And this was another splatter western, but this time it deals with vampires. Yeah, it's pretty much given away in like the first couple chapters because the livestock is being slowly drained of blood, and all of these victims or whatever are being drained of blood as well. So it's up to this mysterious stranger to find out who's doing the killing. And it turns out the stranger has a son who is also a vampire. Very good one. And it was probably my favorite read of November. So that was Here Comes the Sun by Justin M. Woodward. And at number 5 is Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. Yeah, I read a crime thriller. I read 2 crime thrillers that are on this list. And this is one of them. But this was released in 2001. And the movie came out in 2003. This was a fantastic book. This is about a man who recently lost his daughter in a very brutal murder. And it's up to him, his childhood friend, and his other childhood friend, who is a cop, to find out who really killed his daughter. You really feel the emotion in this book, and that twist just literally blows you away. I love this book, and I definitely want to read more from Dennis Lehane. But that was Mystic River. And at number 4 is my favorite splatter western that I read this year, and I couldn't stop talking about this thing, Red Station by Kenzie Jennings. This was just your Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but on the frontier kind of book. This was so good that I really want to read it again. And you have the lady in red, and I believe her name was Clyde Darrow, I think. Or it might be Clyde Northup, something like that. But our main protagonist here is literally going to like this way station to spend the night. And there's like this sinister family who has like Hewitt vibes. And they're just there to really deliver on the gore and brutality. This was such a good book. And this was part of my splatter western vlog that I did back in September. How the Skin Sheds was in that vlog as well. But out of the 4 that I read so far, obviously this one is my favorite. So that was Red Station by Kenzie Jennings. Top 3. Number 3 is probably going to put sci-fi nerds to shame. But sci-fi is sort of my thing, but I prefer horror. My number 3 pick for best reads of 2024 is a little book called Dune by Frank Herbert. And there was so much hype for Dune Part 2 that I definitely wanted to finally read this thing. I listened to this on Audible, and this is basically Game of Thrones meets Star Wars. That's a pretty good description. But you have House Atreides and I'll have to remember some of the names. But House Atreides is royalty on the planet Arrakis, which is like a big sand dune, hence Dune. And Paul Atreides is known to be a new messiah or prophet, and he has to fight Fade Rotha to gain that notoriety. And you just have world building, and you have politics, and so much more that I can literally talk about in like a 30-minute video. But I'm not going to do that because there's a lot to this book. But I absolutely love this, and don't know if I'm going to read the series, but Dune is probably one of the best sci-fi novels ever written, and I'm glad I read it. So that's my number 3 pick. My number 2 pick is Full Brutal by Christopher Triana. So close to being number 1, but this was probably my favorite horror read of 2024. This was about a 16-year-old cheerleader by the name of Kim White who is sick and tired of her average life, and all she wants to do is get into a life of depravity. So she gets with her teacher and humiliates him. I mean, she pretty much sleeps with him, and she pretty much goes on a killing spree just for fun. She gets off on snuff films and serial killers. And this book can get very graphic and kind of funny at times. And this is definitely Jennifer's Body meets Mean Girls meets American Psycho, which American Psycho was almost on this list because I read that this year as well. But this is the undisputed horror novel of the year. Awesome book. And I definitely do want to read more from Christopher Triana as well. Not to mention, I read this thing in 4 days. This clocks in at 2:56. I never do that. But this was part of my extreme horror vlog that I did back in June, where I read 2 more Christopher Triana books. But this one was by far my favorite out of the 3. So that was Full Brutal by Christopher Triana. And the moment y'all been waiting for, and the moment that I've been waiting for. Number 1 is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is probably one of my all-time favorite books that I've ever read since starting BookTube. This is a literary crime thriller that features two dads who recently got out of prison, and they found out that their sons, who were married, were brutally murdered, and they go on a path of revenge. This read like a movie, and I would love to see a movie made from this. I absolutely loved this book. And the chapters were very short, and that ending just blew me away. And there was, I think it's at the end of chapter 4. Yeah, I'm going to read this quote. Tears for who they were and what they all had lost. Each drop felt like it was slicing his face open like a razor blade. Whew. Man, this book was fantastic. I got this back in July of 2021, if you can see that. It took me this long to finally open this thing. And believe it or not, a book of the month selection is my favorite book of the year. And there you have it. Those are my top 10 books of 2024. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and 2025 is quickly approaching. I'm looking forward to another great year of reading, and it's coming very soon. So, very soon, I'm going to give you my January TBR. I think I'm going to do that on New Year's Day. And most definitely my top 10 best movies of the year is coming in the next couple days. So look out for that. And that'll be the end of 2024. Okay. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Adios. Peace.